He hacking me. Please get him off me, coach. Oh, AFK. What you got going today, Lando? Damn. Oh yeah, we take that. Hey, it's crazy. Y'all playing great D and shooting dumbass shots, right? It's crazy. I mean, like, y'all really playing like y'all want to win, but then take dumbass shots like y'all selling, bro. That's wild. Look, 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 look. Oh, see ya. You can quit anytime, though, bro. I see no threat in Yoda. Oh shit. I hear you. Same thing I thought when I seen you pull that broke ass shot, that triple hitch. Fucking who shot you got? Tony Allen, bro. Bro got the Tony Allen. That shot extra garbage. That's the second one you shot like that, bro. You 0 for 2, 2 for 7. Fine, cuz. Shit, enough. Hold that. Got your hands full, bro. Good talking to me, cuz. What you mean? They hoopers. You 3 for 8. I mean, what you mean? No, you know you ain't 3 for 8. You 1 for 4. Oh my gosh, that's even worse. I seen that. Good shot. Boy, he finally hit something. Hold that. Damn, bro. Hold that. Whew. I come through them Toronto windows like a... I come through them Toronto windows like the summer's over. I see no threat in Yoda. I gotta find that line right there. Hold on, hold on. I come through them Toronto streets. Chill out, Jimmy Cooks. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jimmy Cooks, you know better than come back and spin a block on me, bruh.
Knock it down! What? Whose bat is that?
What be going on with the mic, bro? Jimmy Cooks, you thought about pushing T? You better off pushing me. He's staring through it, and I'm staring cover. Yeah, I'm whooping feet. It's a friendly fade, Jimmy. We should keep it that way. I know shit make Gunna wanna look like a saint. Oh shit, Jimmy. You cook, bro. Fuck. What the hell did they? Ah! Wait. The old weight. Oh shit, bro. Why you gonna spin that block, Jimmy? Self check. Garbage 3. Yeah, your jumper is extra garbage, bro. I cannot believe it. Your jumper is extra garbage, Jimmy. Don't throw it to Jimmy no more. No more. This way, we this way, we this way. We ain't worried about Jimmy. He self-check. Oh my gosh, Jimmy. Oh my gosh, Jimmy. Why would they ever put you on me, bro? Let's go. Jimmy. Hit one. Oh. $20 to $5. We're massacring, boys. We're massacring. Don't worry about Jimmy. Bye, Jimmy. Bye, Jimmy. Can't hear you, Jimmy. Do not spin the block, Jimmy. It's over for you, bro. You're done. Nobody wants to play against you. NT S'mores. I've been fading too long. The ride. No, I've been fading too long. Fade it, fade it, fade it, fade it. Fade it, fade it, fade it, fade it. How do I get it to where when I start a game, my shit don't mute? Yeah, wait. I see no threat in Yoda. Okay. Head on him. Let's go. My bad. Damn it. Damn.
Get there! Hey, balance it out! What you got? Whose bat is that? Hey, come get it! Swing out! Yo, watch it! ISO! Hey, yo! Back at you! Good shot! Screen! Watch the ball, man! 12, 9. 12. Ball forward. Get him. Cut. Shot. Pressure him up. Ball coming. I see him. Hey. 14. 20-20. You got foul. I got ball. Go, Jack. No. that. I got him. Oh. 14 to 16. 16-14. Yo!
Ha!
14-18. Give him that. Hey, right here. Shot! 16-18. Oh, mouse in the house. Take them. I see him! Watch the screen! Watch the roll! Screen! Call this fun? 19-18. 18-19. Check it. Down, outside! That's all you!
GG's hustle. Yeah, me too. For sure. DOA, you tried, bro. Had to rise up on you though. The ride, oh, I'm fading. They just keep on saying that they feel you, Nick. Season switching over, I go through them bitches as I'm scorching. Come on, oh, yeah, they ain't even lost that much, huh? I come through those cities like them.
basically, if you're following the principles of deliberate practice, you can grow your skill, 10 times as fast as if you just showed up doing simple repetition practice. So that's kind of how we got started. And over the course of the last few years, we've just been doing a lot of tinkering and experimenting early on to figure out how do you take these principles that the athletes and musicians use, and how do you bring them to salespeople and sales training, and how do you make it work? And it's been a really fun experience just figuring that out, and even funner experience seeing it start to work, right? And seeing salespeople start to actually change their behavior during those high-pressure moments that matter most, and seeing that, yes, in fact, it does work just as well in sales as it works in all those other disciplines. So it's been a heck of a journey over the last, 2.5 years, whatever it's been now.
That's amazing. What a cool story, Jonathan. And I mean, so many things I took some notes there, but one word that stood out was access. And I think when you think about anything, like you're taking, the inputs is not correlating to the outputs. Like you're taking it all in, you're enjoying it. But in the moment, when those high stakes, the emotions kick in, we're not able to spit out all the good we learned. And I think because the emotional, like we're also attached to the outcome, but I love that practice. That's the only way to do it. And when you think about sports and music, and it's almost sad that like why is the bar so low to sales? Like it's the number one job out there. Most people are in some capacity, whether it's direct sales or not. We're all selling, right? But yet there is no bar. It's like read the book. Like for me, here's your bag, here's your territory, let's go. And you're just like, God, that's like rogue. You're letting us go rogue.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think about other disciplines. Just imagine if the paradigm of sales training existed in any other discipline, how laughable it would be, right? Hey guys, welcome to first day of college soccer team. We got Lionel Messi here. He's going to talk to you for a while about how to play better soccer. And great, now next game we're all going to do better. Duh, of course that's not going to work. But people have their SKO events and hire some big sales name to come in and talk to you about how to sell better, and they actually expect people to start selling better afterwards. It's crazy. And that piece you mentioned about access, you're right to hone in on that, because that's huge. I don't want to go nerd out on this too much, but there are physiological changes to the brain when you're in a moment of stress, pressure, and tension, such as a sales call. It changes where the oxygen and blood flow in the brain goes. It changes how fast different parts of the brain can operate and function. And the parts of the brain that tend to slow down, that you lose access to, are those same parts of the brain where knowledge is stored, right? Whereas the parts of the brain that speed up and get all the blood flow and the oxygen are parts of the brain that have to do with habit, rituals, and routines, right, and defaults. So the fact that, as I mentioned, only 2% of what I learned was available to me in the moment isn't like because I don't have enough willpower or something, because I don't care enough. It's literally the physiology of my brain is making it that way. So there's no way past that. That is the way human beings work. In moments of stress and pressure, we default to the most familiar defaults. We can't access most of the knowledge that we have stored in our frontal cortex. It's just not the way the brain works. So, sales training ought to reflect that truth, right? It ought to focus on building those new habits, those new deeply dug grooves, so that they'll be available to sellers under moments of stress and pressure.
And think about, your reason why you started. You were frustrated. But think about, the sales leaders. Like, you're not hitting sales revenue targets or metrics, and yet some continue to do nothing about it, or throw the board on it, which kills me. And it's like, we need the how. We don't need more of the same thing. We need how. But even to add to that, the why and the explanation behind it about physiologically this was actually going on, and you're incapable of doing this. And so I think it just really solidifies the case where this needs to happen. This needs to happen.
Yeah, no, otherwise we'll just keep, solving the wrong problem, right? Because traditional sales training has a place for sure, because a lot of times sellers don't actually understand what they're supposed to be doing, how they should be handling moments. They don't understand their own process, right? They don't understand the dynamics at play between buyers and sellers. So, there's a place for knowledge for sure. It just can't stop there, right? There has to be this middle step of, again, rewiring the brain so that the new knowledge becomes habit, the new knowledge becomes a deeply dug groove in that brain, so that under moments of stress and pressure, it's available to the sellers. And if you don't take that step, just stuffing more knowledge in the front end doesn't change the fact that none of it's available. The analogy I use sometimes, if you're having issues with your car and you're finding that the gas in your tank isn't making it to the engine where you need it to be, putting more gas in the tank just to solve the problem. You got to figure out why it's not making it over to the engine. So similarly, if all the knowledge in your reps' heads isn't showing up on calls, stuffing more knowledge in their heads isn't going to solve the problem. You got to figure out how to get that transference to happen. And again, that has to do with rewiring the brain, forming new habits, etc.
And that's a great analogy. And I think, like for me, it's an indicator when someone will say, "Will you come in and do a one-day training?" And I'm like, "No." Because it doesn't set me up for success, nor your team. If there's no reinforcement, I can motivate them, but there will be no change after. And so that just heights to me that, they're an unsophisticated buyer, or they have budget, they have to use it. So I think there's an opportunity to educate people as well. It says, well, what's going to happen beyond this? How can you, it's just like, look at the future and look at your team. They want to win. They want to be developed. So you're not also supporting them. You might think you are because you're doing a half day or a day, but in actuality, you're not.
Another red flag for me is when people say, hey, we really want our team to learn everything from prospecting through discovery, through demo, through negotiation in the next 12 weeks, okay? We're really behind in a lot of areas, so in the next 12 weeks, can you solve all these problems? And it's like, no. I could stuff people's head full of knowledge for 12 weeks, but again, you can't actually change behaviors. The work that we do at the practice lab is actually, by most standards, quite slow. We'll spend 3 months working on just demos. But not only just demos, but specific moments in the demo that carry a lot of impact on how much what we're sharing with them resonates with the buyer, and how easily they're able to connect the dots between what you showed them in their world and why they should care and how they should position their boss. We just are zooming in to specific moments, and it takes 3 months to get meaningful behavior change across the entire team for just a few specific moments in the demo, right? Which again is glacially slow by the pace that most people want, right? They want in the next 3 months for all their problems to be fixed. But the reality is, to really change behavior, you do have to slow down. You have to zoom in on what are the small changes we can make that'll have really big impact on results, and then just focus on those small changes rather than again trying to cover everything.
Yeah, and I think it is those nuances that really do make the difference. But when as you said, you're creating these new neural pathways, which take time, but it also allows the rep to get comfortable. Because there's going to be that initial discomfort. So it's kind of like working through getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. That I think when the time is up, there's going to be certain parts when they get to this part of the sales call, there's ease there. And it's not like it's rigid where it's I'm really bad, oh, here's my good part. But you can see the edge is starting to smooth out across them all, because the confidence from those areas where you really zoomed in kind of starts overtaking the whole conversation.
And that process, right, of going from concept to awkward, stumbly first attempt that probably doesn't go well to a decent second attempt to maybe by the time you get to the 10th attempt is actually pretty good. That process has to happen somewhere. So as sales leaders, you get to decide, does that process happen in real calls with real customers with money on the line? And that's where they have their awkward, stumbly first attempt that doesn't go well, and it costs you a $20,000 deal because it didn't go well, right? Or do they have those stumbly, awkward moments in practice with teammates where there's no money on the line, right? So that's the other thought. The other side of this practice piece is even outside of the brain science stuff. It's just a matter of if the stumbling has to happen somewhere, better it happens here than when there's actually money on the line. Because that's a very expensive way to grow skill. When every time you make a mistake, you lose 5 figures, right?
I mean, it's not good for your prospects. You're wasting their time, but even your salespeople, if they're commission based, they want to make money. But I think there's got to be an element of mindset going. You will fail initially. Nobody tries something for the first time in Excel. So, and I think the quicker you can embrace the fact, think about anything you've tried for the first time, you're going to suck, right? But you're going to work through that, and then you're going to get the confidence. So it's kind of like that continuum of learning. And I think if you can set it up that you're not going to be great the first time. And then they're okay, I'm not going in expecting to be Superman, and I can kind of check my ego as much as I can at the door. Then there's this element of vulnerability and able to try. And I think that makes a difference. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually a really, really important part of making the practice count, right? I mentioned earlier the difference between deliberate practice and maybe the way most people do role plays on their team. This is one of the big differences because, early in my sales career, I would do role plays from time to time, and every single time the expectation was that this was your opportunity to prove that you could do it. Sometimes they even called it certification, proved you could do it, Other times it was just kind of the signal they were sending and how they did practice. It was like, okay, John, your turn. Here's an objection. Show me what you got. Great. All right. And now your turn. Show me what you got. And it's like you're being tested, right? And you have to prove how good you are. You have to prove how competent you are. And that's one of the reasons you hate role-playing, is because of that expectation. It leads for a very, very uncomfortable conversation, uncomfortable moment. But it actually leads to less effective skill growth as well. Because here's the thing. When you're in that environment where you're being tested, we call this the performance zone, right? Your goal is simple. Do the very best you can do in this moment. And when you're in that zone, you don't really have an opportunity to improve. All you really do is take whatever your current best is and you just make it more permanent by doing just that. Because in that moment where your goal is simple, do the very best you can do in this moment, you're going to turn to the most tried and true, the most familiar, the thing you can count on, which is typically the thing that you always do anyways. So when you put someone in practice, the expectation is performance, prove to me how good you are, you're not giving them the chance to do things differently. You're not giving them a chance to grow their skill, become better. All you give them the chance to do is prove to you what their current best is, and more deeply ingrained in their brains, whatever their current best is. Compare that to what we call the improvement zone, which is where you're in a setting where the expectation is this is going to be kind of stumbly and awkward at first. You're probably not going to do great because this is new, this is different, this is training your brain in new ways of functioning. And anytime you train your brain to do something new, it's not going to look great at first. When you give people that psychological safety and that permission, that allows them to start to slow down and to try new things and to stumble and to make mistakes and to kind of feel out something different that they're unfamiliar with. And ultimately, it allows them to make new choices and handle a situation differently and start the process of digging that new groove in their brain, that new alternative way of handling things. But you can only get that if you're in the improvement zone. And again, you can only be in the improvement zone if you have that psychological safety where it's okay to fail, it's expected to mess up, no one's testing you, no one's judging you, right? So that's like the first place, most real place in the world, because the expectation is performance, which again is a great way to make your current best more permanent. But that's all it's going to do. If you want to actually grow a new skill, change behavior, then you need to be in the improvement zone where they have that flexibility to mess up.
I love that, and that pretty much sums up my career at the beginning of my career. It was just, you had your little pitch, and you kind of re-emphasized or re-anchored it. But what, like, even the language performance, it's just kind of like no room for error here. Versus improvement, it almost gives you the safe space to make mistakes, and try to slow down and try new things, and like you said, make new choices. Because when you're in the performance zone, I feel like it's all about you, and you're just working on your pitch and your craft. But your active listening and your verbal and nonverbal cues go out the door because you're just all inwardly trying to perform. Meanwhile, your prospects are giving off signs or they're doing something and you're not even aware of it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another piece of this too. When you're training your team, part of what you can train your team. And I guess I should even be more clear. When you're having your team practice, part of what you can have your team practice is what they say, how they talk about their features, how they respond to objections, how they compare themselves to competition. You can practice those things, and you should practice those things. The other thing that practice can do, if you're doing the practice well, is you can actually use practice to rewire your reps' brains and give them skills and mental abilities that they didn't have before, or maybe strengthen their skills and abilities that they were weak before, including skills and abilities like listening, like empathy, like curiosity. These are brain abilities, and these aren't things you can just flip a switch and say, oh, I'll just be more empathetic on this call, right? Or, hey, I'll just be more curious on this call. You can't just really work that way, right? True curiosity is a pattern in the brain, right? Where the brain notices things that it didn't used to notice before, and where it draws connections where it didn't used to draw connections before. And that isn't always in your conscious control. So, to your point, a lot of times the most important part of the sales interaction isn't the thing the rep says. A lot of times the most important part is what the rep notices about the buyer, and what the rep picks up both in the buyer's words and what they're saying, but even what the seller picks up in the buyer's body language and tone of voice, right? And volume and all these other cues. And it's a lot to ask a salesperson's brain in the moment, under pressure, right? Where they have to simultaneously be thinking of what they want to say next. They need to be watching the clock to pay attention to how much time they got left. They need to be paying attention to what the person is saying to them. They also should be paying attention to the nonverbal cues the person's giving off. They should also be paying attention to what the person isn't saying, right? Gaps in their narrative they want to explore more. They should be tuning into their own sense of curiosity to, again, make those connections and get those little itches where you're like, huh, I want to know more here, right? That's kind of a hard skill to do. But once you have that itch of curiosity, then your seller's brain also needs to find language for like a question or figure out how to direct the conversation towards that, right? So typically it's a question they ask. So they got to figure out what their question is. And then even once they know the question they want to ask, they got to deliver it with their own nonverbal cues in alignment so the question lands well. Like, there is so much a seller's brain has to do, particularly on discovery call, but really during any sell. All of it has to be done during times of high emotion. And if you have a rep's brain that just isn't wired and doesn't have the skill of deep listening, of empathy, of reading body language, of being curious, there's not much knowledge is going to do, right? One analogy I use sometimes is that a lot of times with sales, training or sales methodologies or sales playbooks that managers give their team, it's like you're equipping them with like a really sophisticated software program to run around what great selling looks like. But then they try to run it through their processor, their brain, which just can't handle it, right? It's an older, weaker processor that can't handle this like immensely complex code you just gave them for what good selling looks like. And it, crashes the processor, and then the processor, when it crashes, just goes back to its default mode. So if you're going to ask your people to do really complex, difficult, mentally demanding, cognitively demanding version of selling, you've got to use practice and training to actually strengthen their brains so their brains can keep up, right? Because again, the things we ask sellers to do, it's a lot to do. So many different dimensions of, again, listening and thinking and planning and responding and adjusting. And it's a very difficult mental task. And again, other professions where there's difficult mental tasks, they recognize this and they invest in upgrading their hardware, right? They invest in sharpening their mind and growing their skills. Sales seems to be this place where we like forget that good selling is actually very difficult to do. And we kind of skip that skill development piece and we just say, oh, as long as you have the knowledge of what it looks like, that'll work. But for another analogy here, imagine you learned everything that could be learned about freestyle rapping. You read every book, you watched every documentary, right? You listened to rap battles, and you became a knowledge expert on freestyle rapping. But then if someone handed you a microphone in front of a room full of 50 people, could you actually freestyle rap? Very different, right? Knowledge and having the wiring in your brain to do it is very different. So similarly, you can talk to people about be curious, read the room, notice their nonverbals. But in the moment, that's actually a very hard thing for your brain to do. And if you haven't used practice to train and develop and sharpen your mind, then you're not really going to be able to implement and execute all that. So that was a very long answer. But yes, you're right to point out that side of the equation. It's not just about what you say, it's about what you notice, right, in your listening and your human skills. But even human skills can be trained and practiced in the same way that you can, or in similar ways that you can practice other sales behaviors.
I love that you called it human skills. So even Eminem, that's what I thought about when you were sharing that. Eminem can have, can practice with that stuff initially, but when you painted that picture, like a lot of people who are listening now, sales leaders, and perhaps whether you're training internally or you're bringing someone in and solely focus on content, like that picture you just painted about active listening, what to think, managing the time, managing your slot, all of those things, the spoken, the unspoken. Why do they ask? Like for me, it's never the question, why did they ask? Why aren't they asking? It's like all those things to balance. I feel that's, as human, that's what we need to do. Like even when you said the brain, there's a disconnect there. That cues the curiosity to go, why is that happening? And then to just be aware that all this is happening and have the confidence and the wherewithal to say, I'm just curious, like, where is this coming? And being able to execute on it versus you can see how it would be overwhelming to someone who's not in tune with themselves, with the buyer, with the desired outcome, all these things, because it is complex. And so what are your suggestions, Jonathan, in terms of like structuring this? Do you frame it in different stages? Do you do one thing and then you start layering kind of left hand, right hand, both hands? Just because you can see if you overload the system too much, you're going to fail. But it's also, how can you break it down in digestible bites where they're kind of digesting the first one, getting confident, and then building so that over time, 3 months or whatever that is, it's conversational tone, and they're not losing sight of them as people, where they're just, steamrolling over these objections and these nuances, and it's like, hang on a minute, like, you just dropped something huge here, like, let me lean into that, so that they're really comfortable being themselves on these calls and not these robotic closers.
Yeah. There's a few things in there. Comfortable being yourselves versus a robotic closer, right? That's very interesting, and that almost comes down to like the culture of the team, the expectations, the permission you give them. I think every seller knows where they pick it up. Maybe it's from watching movies of salespeople, or maybe it's from something else, but it feels like every seller has a sales voice, right? Just like I feel like most people have a customer service voice, right, that they use. And it's very different than their real voice. And this can be really dangerous because when you are in a mindset and a mind frame where you are relaxed, you're leaning into humanity, and you're treating this as just a human-to-human conversation, a lot of that complexity that I mentioned earlier, of all these things you have to do simultaneously in your brain, and figuring out what to say next and how to say it and what to cover and listening, a lot of that stuff, the intuition can take over a little bit more and handle a lot of that workload for you. But for the intuition to take over and handle that workload for you, you have to be in a place where you see this as a human-to-human conversation, right? You see this as not me selling you, me convincing you, anything like that. You see it as, hey, I'm here to help and get curious. So that shift is actually more of a mental shift, a perspective shift. And again, that has to generally be supported by the sales leaders, right? One of the most valuable things that one of my sales leaders did for me in the past is, and sometimes in our call reviews, he'd even point out to me when Seller John took over and say, look, this isn't you anymore. Like, I knew you. I talk to you all the time. I know how you talk. In this moment, you lost track of Seller John, or you were real John, and you turned into Seller John. It's that awareness helps me to shift that pattern. And again, a lot of times that pattern starts in your mind. Do you see this as, I'm about to hop on a sales call and I'm going to convince this person of something? Or do you see it as, I'm going to have a conversation with a human being, see if I can help. If I can't, no big deal. If I can, great. But let's just see where this takes us. When you can truly embrace that mindset, a lot of the complexity I mentioned kind of gets taken over by intuition. And you can do 3/4 of that cognitive work unconsciously. Versus when you're in a sales state, much less of that intuition is happening. You have to mentally do a lot more of that work. So there's a mindset shift there. But the other piece you talked about too, like how to bring about this change, is really worth touching on as well. Just like this one piece at a time, this chunking it down piece, because that's another real principle to look at practice. When a professional football team goes into practice, they don't say, all right, folks, you folks over there on the left side of me, your team A, folks on the right side of me, your team B, go play a football game. And then they play the whole football game through, and then they say, great work, let's go back and do the same thing tomorrow. It won't get any better, right? In order to develop skill, you do need to focus on one piece at a time. You need to be very clear going into it as to what good looks like here, right? Sometimes what good looks like is very specific. Here's the talk track to use. Other times it's a bit more nebulous, like, hey, your response should include elements of empathy. Your response should include elements of, other-centeredness. Your response should include thoughtfulness. Should be a little more nebulous. But one way or another, you gotta be clear in advance what good looks like for this specific piece. Then people head in and they practice just that specific piece. Then they get feedback on that piece. And then they immediately get to implement that feedback in another attempt. So that's another principle of deliberate practice there, is that the feedback goes in the middle, it doesn't go at the end, right? It should be practice, feedback, practice, feedback, practice, feedback, where each time you get feedback, you're immediately having a chance to implement it, try it on for size, see how it feels. Versus more traditional role plays where you step up to the plate, you shoot your best shot, your manager gives you some feedback, you sit down, it's the next person's turn, right? That doesn't help grow skill. It's a really slow way to grow skill. So it's definitely important to break it down one piece at a time and practice one piece at a time. It's important to structure the practice in an environment where there's the expectation of failure. And just to put some specific examples to this, for any sales leaders who want to try this practice thing out, I tend to think about the chunking it down in two different ways. One version of chunking it down is chunking it down to specific moments. And say, let's just work on this moment until this moment is the second major. Then let's move on to the next one. So for example, let's say, you're looking at a demo. One moment could be how you open the demo. Another moment could be how you tee up and set the context for some of your most important features. You can just practice teeing up that feature, setting the context for it. Then another moment you can practice is after you've shown one of your more important features. How do you hand the microphone over to your buyer, and how do you get them talking about what they just saw, reflecting on what they just saw, how they'd use it, what the value would be, right? That's another moment you can practice. You can just practice writing down the feature, getting your buyer talking, writing down the feature, getting your buyer talking, right? So that's how you can look at a demo and break it down into specific moments. And maybe the last moment is like, when you're done with the demo, how do you do that kind of like end of call wrap up, right? How do you get their buy-in at the end of the call? How do you set up next steps at the end of the call? That could be your different moments. The thing I'm going to look at this too is even just down to skills. So when we work with folks around discovery, we don't really look at individual moments, because the discovery call is very unpredictable. Outside of like how you open the call and how you wrap it up, there's not much that's predictable about a discovery call. It's a wild west in there. So that's not really a great time to use that framework of practicing one moment at a time. So with discovery calls, we focus on skills, one skill at a time. So first, we'll focus on listening. Right? We teach people 4 different types of listening, and we give them a chance to practice using the 4 different types of listening so they can feel how they're different for them as a seller, but then they can also switch roles and experience what it's like as the speaker to be listened to at those 4 different levels. And that's all we focus on. We don't care anything else that happens in the interaction. We're just focusing on the listening and the 4 types of listening until that becomes, natural for reps. And then we move on to curiosity. Training their brains to get more curious, to notice things they didn't used to notice before, to draw connections they didn't used to draw connections to before. And we just practice curiosity. So at this point, we no longer care about the listening. We don't care about what the rep says. We don't care about any of that. We just care how curious are you? Are you noticing things you didn't used to notice? Are you getting this itch in your brain of something you really want to know? Right? And we just practice that skill. Then we move on and we practice the skill of how to take that itch of curiosity and how to quickly turn it into a thought-provoking question that, allows you to be direct and get to the heart of the matter, but that doesn't like ruffle feathers and cause defensiveness, that is open-ended, that gets, valuable answers rather than being close-ended, not pretty much. And we teach them how to take this itch of curiosity and quickly turn it into a question. That's the next skill. Then the next skill we layer on top of is something called elicitation, how to get people to share information with you without actually even asking them a question. And then we teach them those techniques, just work on those techniques. So like by the end of it, you've got listening, you've got empathy, you've got curiosity, you've got questions, you've got how to get information without questions. But we just layer one piece in at a time. So it might take 3 months to get through this, right, compared to a traditional sales training where you sit people down for 4 hours and teach them all about discovery and then send them on their merry way. This is a long process, but at the end of it, people's brains are actually different than they used to be. That hardware, that processor they have can actually handle more than we used to be able to handle and do more under pressure than we used to be able to do. Because we layered in one piece at a time. I'm telling you, by the end of this, it's so powerful to see reps. Like, to see reps in action, stacking all these things together, listening and empathy and curiosity and questions and elicitation and all these things. It's just beautiful to behold people actually doing this. And again, these are like these human skills, those soft skills that a lot of times people are like, you either got it, you don't. You're either curious or you're not. You're either empathetic or you're not. But that's not the case. Those are just skills that can be wired into the brain with the right kind of consistent practice. And it is just, again, transformation when you watch that happening. And the other cool thing, too, is that once you rewire someone's brain, it affects every area of their life. They're suddenly more curious and empathetic when they're in one-on-ones with their manager. They're suddenly more, open-minded, better listeners when they're talking to their spouse. They suddenly are asking better questions when talking to their kids. Like, we found that to be a really great seller, you need the same skills. You need to just be a really great human. Right? One of our favorite slogans is the most powerful selling skills are the most powerful human skills. So it's always really cool to watch these sellers who came into our programs to work on their selling skills suddenly saying, I'm showing up as a more effective human in every area of my life now. Because my brain has been rewired to be a more curious and empathetic brain. Once that's been done, again, you got the same brain when you clock out, you have it during work too. So the benefits are really widespread.
I can see that as for myself, being a patient and an empathetic mother, because you do want to fly off the handle. But I think when you can hold space, because when you think about the amount and the competing thoughts and priorities that are going in our brain, that also holds true in the sales training environment. But if you can just isolate and do that one thing, like that's over time, tension under time, that, as you said, that's going to drive change. But what I love about what you just said, Jonathan, is not just as a seller, in your life, so that you are more curious as a person, you're more empathetic as a person, and you don't revert back to the other, care and It's just, this is who I've become. And this fake it till you make it, but fake it until you become it. And I think people just want that instant gratification, and they're not fully prepared to go through the process. It's change management, right? But that takes time, and that takes practice. And those who are too transactional, too just I want the prize, they're not gonna, they're not gonna see the long-term change that those who are willing and invested to commit to the overall process will.
Well, I think that's a general human tendency, but I feel like it's a particular commonality just in the sales industry. I think one of the biggest problems in the sales industry is short-sightedness and short-term focus, right? Because it is very hard to get sales leadership and go up. It's hard to get your CFO and your CEO engaged to like invest in growing these skills. That might take 3 months before they see anything, maybe 6 months before